What is it about the Negro? I mean, every other group that came as an immigrant somehow, not easily, but somehow got around it. Is it just the fact that Negroes are black?
White America must that no other ethnic group has been a slave on American soil. That is one thing that other immigrant groups haven't had to face. The other thing is that the color became a stigma. American society made the Negro's color a stigma. America freed the slaves in 1863 through the Emancipation Proclamation of Abraham Lincoln, but gave the slaves no land or nothing in reality, and as a matter of fact, to get started on. At the same time, America was giving away millions of acres of land in the West and the Midwest, which meant that there was a willingness to give the white peasants from Europe an economic base. And yet it refused to give its black peasants from Africa, who came here involuntarily, worked free for 244 years, any kind of economic base. And so emancipation for the Negro was really freedom to hunger. It was freedom to the winds and rains of heaven. It was freedom without food to eat or land to cultivate, and therefore it was freedom and famine at the same time. And when white Americans tell the Negro to lift himself by his own bootstraps, they don't look over the legacy of slavery and segregation. I believe we ought to do all we can and seek to lift ourselves by our own bootstraps, but it's a cruel jest to say to a bootless man that he ought to lift himself by his own bootstraps. And many Negroes, by the thousands and millions, have been left bootless as a result of all of these years of oppression and as a result of a society that deliberately made his color a stigma and something worthless and degrading.
Welcome to the Gilchrist Experience. You just saw a man that I cherish and love and respect, and he made it plain and simple right there. I mean, that's a history lesson for all of us. To see how we've struggled all these years since 1863 with not a boot to pull ourselves up there. Welcome to the show, my family, my brethrens, Brother Leroy and Brother Graham. Now we're going to go over a little bit about slavery, integration, how immigrants see us coming from other countries, how it stands today with white supremacy reigning supreme, how we have a Klansman in the White House. His daddy was a Klansman. He's promoting bringing back Nazism. I mean, this is sheer insanity. If Martin Luther King were here today, look at where have we gone? Back to what? Going back to the days of what, 1863? What's the state of black America today, Brother Leroy?
Well, thank you for the opportunity to be with you and Brother Graham. And the state of black America is a very interesting state that we're in. It's covered over by a lot of camouflage, but at the same time, the state of black America is right in front of us. When we look into their picture of how the economy is and look beyond that to the commentators about the economy in America, is one where they are openly speaking of the fact that they're looking, or they're on a course to eliminate the middle class and create the very poor and the very rich. This is what they're saying, not the guys on Fox News, not the guys on MSNBC, but the guys that you hear on WBAI, some you hear on WNYC, National Public Radio, but you don't hear this openly. And if they are setting up a society based on tax write-offs, tax breaks and whatnot to the very rich and none to the middle class and none to the very poor, if that is in fact what it is, then we have to look at, one of the ways that we look at the state of black America is through that lens, because we're not going according to how they set up their system. We're not going to be among the very rich. They will place in front of us some of us who have gotten through by whatever means, and show that as an example of how we can do in America, and making those of us who don't know think that there's something wrong with us because we don't have a job, we don't have this kind of income, etc. White supremacy, and I'll close on this and pass to Graham. White supremacy is a system, and that system has various manifestations within the society, and especially within the black community. And when you talk about the state of black America, we have to look at what our young people are confronted with. It's not necessarily a job, it's what kind of education that they're getting. And in the New York Times back in June, they had a series showing that the New York City Board of Education was removing white principals. They didn't deal with the black guys and black women. White principals, male and female, who were turning around schools that had been failing, that they were removing them. There's a system set up within the Board of Education to remove effective teachers and principals. For what end? To keep black people dumb. Uneducated.
Right.
Now, if we don't, we can't say, we cannot say the system isn't working, because it is. When you understand white supremacy, we are not to be in the position of being made equal to the slave master's children. So I'm closing on that one and passing it to Graham. But folks who want to follow up, you have parents out there, grandparents who are looking at the Gilchrist Experience, and I've maintained this before in other segments, that this is not a spectator program.
Exactly.
When the audience picks up information, they got to act on it. They got to do some kind of research. Let me see if these Negroes is telling the truth.
Right.
All right? Okay? Because they say that anyway, oh, I don't believe them Negroes, but they watch the whole show. But they got to check out the New York Times series on how they remove effective principals and teachers from failing schools, and those failing schools are only in our community. So
I initially want to follow up with Graham. Graham sent this piece to me about Martin, and I took it especially important for us to constantly run because of the fact that how immigrants see us as black people. This is what's most important. You get Jamaicans coming from Jamaica thinking they're superior, or most immigrants come here knowing us as being inferior. Or you see any immigrant coming in and see us without a job, without schooling, and this is not even part of the white supremacy plan.
this is what?
The part of the white
It is,
supremacist plan.
Yes.
To bring in immigrants to show us as ignorant, and then Martin explains the whole system to us right there.
You know, even in, this is crazy, in Iraq, the Iraqis are now getting plastic surgery because they want American noses. My son told me about this. They want American noses. They don't want the broad noses that they have. They want American noses. So the money that's being made in Iraq on plastic surgery, they've already been co-opted by white people coming into their country with a civilization that spans more than 4,000 years. And they want to look white. The play of the British were very cunning because they educated their subjects. And their subjects came to this country assuming they were better qualified and knew more than American blacks.
Exactly.
And I had to ask, because my mother's family's from the West Indies. So I said to my mother, I said, it's interesting, you talk about West Indians, but you married a Georgia sharecropper. Okay? And she said, there was no man equal to him.
Right.
He wasn't West Indian.
Right.
He was a Georgia sharecropper.
Who struggled.
And I've asked repeatedly, how many colleges have been built by West Indians in the West Indies?
Wow. Yeah.
without the Queen Mother's help.
Yeah.
We have a system here which denigrates our people systematically. People coming from other countries see the images that are portrayed
That's right.
intentionally through media in their countries, and they come here and they think this is the way it is.
Yeah.
So I just got back from the African American Film Festival, and there's a brother that did a piece on racism in the public schools in New York. And New York has the most segregated schools in the United States.
That's almost hard. That's hard to believe, isn't it?
Not only that, and you talked about them taking principals out of good performing schools. I have a friend who was a principal in a school, did very well. They moved him over to Wingate, and there are 3 high schools in Wingate High School in Brooklyn. That makes no sense. Part of the Bloomberg debacle of destroying the education system. But he came in to take over a school. They said they were going to shut it down. They needed him to come in and revitalize the school and bring it back up to standard. He spent the year evaluating every aspect of the school. The teachers that he found to be less than standard, substandard, he told them, you need to look for another place to work next year. I can't use you. Those white teachers had him brought up on charges of being racist.
Right.
He had to go to a hearing at the Board of Ed. He was suspended.
Yes.
They put them in what they call the rubber room.
Yes.
These are principals sitting around, they're getting paid, but they're not allowing them to do their job. They have them in a room downtown Brooklyn doing nothing. The parents even said, before he came, our kids were learning nothing. So he said to them, you had me take over a school that you were going to close. I did a full evaluation of all the problems to correct the problems. And you got me here suspended because some white people said I'm being racist? No, they're not qualified to be here. They're not good enough to teach the kids. They don't have the heart. Another thing Bloomberg did, he brought a lot of teachers from out of state here because they would not have to pay off their student loans if they worked in an impoverished area for 5 years. So it's a give back. You come to New York, you work for 5 years as a teacher.
Oh, I remember that program, right.
And Bloomberg was hiring plumbers, shoe shine boys, anybody. Didn't have to have a background in education. He was hiring them to come in, work 5 years, and you don't have a student loan anymore. Another teacher in my church, a young lady who taught chemistry. She was a med student. She was going to teach for a couple years and then go to med school. So she told me she's at a school in the Bronx. I said, what do you teach? She said, chemistry. And she says, well, you know, they don't offer chemistry to all of the students. I said, what do you mean? She said, they only have the students that they believe can pass the regent take the course. That way the stats for the school look good. And they don't have anybody failing chemistry. When we went to high school, you took chemistry, you took biology. So they are denying, knowingly and intentionally denying black and Latino students subjects in the public school. And this is what Martin was talking about. You talk about bootstraps and people don't have boots. You had land grants that you gave to white people. Black people got nothing. You have farm subsidies, which they give to Monsanto and Agro and these big corporations. But I was in a meeting in Cincinnati back around 1999. Black farmers were losing 1,000 acres of land a week. A week because they could not get the farm subsidies, and big white corporations were getting millions of dollars in farm subsidies. And that's what Martin is talking about. And we need to wake up. The best thing that's happened to us in recent history is Donald Trump, because we can see where we are. He's not good, but it's opening the eyes. We now see, and we never, NYU was teaching a course on post-racial America because Barack Obama was president. Racism hasn't gone anywhere. It's always been here. The People's Institute for Survival and Beyond, when they did this study with the students in the Board of Ed, it was in the documentary I saw, And these kids were from the highbrow schools on the west side, east side, from Brownsville, from Harlem, white, black, Asian, Latino. Their experience was so varied, but they got an understanding of what racism is and how it works and how it affects white kids as well as it affects black kids. How it has white kids thinking something abnormal and corrupt, as it has black kids thinking they're not qualified.
Correct.
And they're not getting what the white kids are getting.
Correct.
You know, we all have a strong background on how to be successful and how to really make it in life. And we've come up with our challenges throughout our age, you know, but I mean, when I was 25, 26, I mean, you couldn't touch me as far as I was concerned. I mean, I was so upbeat, and I came through the 60s when the
Right.
challenges were even, but today, with all this planned genocide from crack on, from the 80s on, our generations have been marginalized, really beaten down. So the crack era left such a wound in our spirit that a lot of people haven't come up with any sort of hope at all.
It's a continuation of the program.
But you got to remember, the 70s, the 60s, there was hope. Even with Nixon, affirmative action. I mean, we had a chance in the world. You remember when we were coming up in the 70s, there were opportunities for, all you had to do was stand in and have a faith and go in there and take over.
That's what Donald
The
Trump
spook
said.
said that-
He liked to be a black man
Yeah,
back in the...
in 89.
All right.
He said it in 89,
89.
yeah.
So-
right after Central Park 5.
But we
let
have
me
to
get
study
to
the
Trump.
history of the programming
But see,
to
Trump,
keep black people...
Trump knew what was available to us. He was there. He's 5 years younger than me and Leroy.
Yeah.
But I watched Trump grow up and watch him play in, there was Decadent City in the 70s. I mean, you had a free fall. 42nd Street was the Sodom and Gomorrah. I mean, before AIDS, this town was so
I
decadent.
worked the strip. I worked the strip
All right.
steady. You don't have to tell
but
me about
the youth
42nd
don't even
Street. I worked
understand
it.
that. Anybody before
Right.
before Reagan came up and supposedly purified New York, or they turned things around. All right, in 1980. But from 80 on, it was a decade of greed, 80 to 90, and then 92, Clinton came in and made things. We had our first black president, so we thought. I mean,
Who? Not Clinton.
Clinton. We're talking about Clinton.
Yeah,
Played the
that-
saxophone.
No, a woman
He
who
played
didn't
the
know better.
saxophone.
A woman who didn't know better said he was there for
Well,
our first
you know,
black
he played the
president.
saxophone. He was cool.
Yeah, well,
That was about as close to black as we had seen.
he has never wanted to be black.
All right,
we
but-
know that.
Well, he was from the South. He was
And we
a
know
good crack.
he's from Arkansas. And we
A
know
good
what that
crack.
is. Right.
But he was all right in comparison to what we had before. Reagan.
Just as
Come on.
dangerous. He's more cunning than this
But
guy.
look today, what we have in the White House now. A con man, a New York con man, a white supremacist,
Let us...
a low down dirty dog.
Well, like I said,
I
we
mean-
see what America is. This is the illusion.
No, but Graham,
Strip away
Graham,
the illusion.
You readily give it up
Racism
to,
has always been
we know
with
that,
us.
but we always, like Gil Noble said, we worked around it. We always worked around it, and they were always stupid. But I never thought they were stupid enough to put a race. But see, that was the Hillary haters. That was the Hillary haters and the Russians that got them in there.
Why
now.
would a stupid person not vote for Donald
Well, they're
Trump?
racists themselves.
That too.
Well, that's half the country. But half of those racists were just befuddled. Half of those people, a lot of
don't
those
have
people voted
healthcare.
for Obama.
They don't have health care in Appalachia, out in the
Well, they thought they
midsection of the country. All right.
What did the
Even
con
tax
man
bill.
promise them? What did the con man promise
He
them?
said lower taxes.
But what did he tell the poor people? The Appalachian, the coal miners, that he would bring
He's
back
gonna bring
coal.
back
You
coal.
don't, you don't
Coal
put,
What
them
a
back,
joke.
put them back
What
to
a
work.
joke.
It's not. Yeah.
Give them more black lung disease. I mean, this is a joke here. What Trump has showed up America, but nobody's standing back and saying, now, don't we have something to be proud about? I mean, how we can let a fool get in there and do this to us? People that were struggling, what if Clinton had been president? What if the Russians hadn't put out such a strong propaganda tool against Hillary? What if we didn't have all those Hillary haters? You were one of the main.
You got that right. I'm not ashamed of it either, because I didn't care for either of them.
That's how he got in.
A decent candidate.
Who was more shocked that he won than anybody else? When Trump won, he was the most surprised that he won.
Right, right. So here you are. Who is going to run for the Democratic Party? Who are they going to? This is their problem. Who are they going to put up as a candidate? Because the end of the year, the next campaign starts. Who is going to be the candidate for the Democratic Party or the Independent or whatever party?
Who would you suggest?
I don't see anybody on the horizon. This is the problem. The Democratic Party has not put forth an agenda for the people of this country. I would think we could put
anybody up against Trump.
And you cannot rely upon the trials with Mueller and all this stuff.
But what about?
They need a good candidate.
I mean, it's shown us, all right, what you said about Trump being president. It shows the face of America. But I was one of those hopeful people to think that the bright whites in America, which we have quite a few, hopefully, where are they? Why is the Republican Congress letting Trump get away with the junk he's getting away with? He's an embarrassment. He goes to Helsinki and puts everybody down. He embarrasses America. And people are happy about this? I mean,
I'm laughing because
it's a joke.
When Bush went to China for the Olympics,
Nixon went to China.
Bush went to China for the they never showed the pictures of him stupefied, drunk, leaning all over the place. I saw it on YouTube after the fact. Now I'm looking at this thing, I said, wow, I didn't see that in the news. So when you talk about embarrassments, that's one of the reasons why a lot of Caucasians voted for Barack Obama, because Bush Jr. was an embarrassment to them. Mm-hmm. All right?
As was Palin with McCain.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And McCain didn't want Palin. But she was Looney Tunes, and they had enough common sense to say, I'm going with the black dude because this don't make no sense.
And he offered the anti-war movement, talking about Barack Obama,
right.
He offered them the opportunity for their voice to be heard, but it wasn't heard, and they were circumvented by his being in office. Mm-hmm. But that's not the issue right now. The issue where blacks, in my estimation, make the mistake is saying, well, what are the Democrats going to do? It's what black people are going to do.
There you go.
What organization can we become a part of that begins to look at the condition of black people in America? And you cannot depend on the Democrats to do that for us, neither the Green Party, anybody else like that. We have to begin to come into our churches and have these kind of conversations on that basis, as small, but even before that, within our families.
How is that possible?
Within our families,
How
we
is
start.
that possible?
What do you mean?
You see the black preachers that went to see Trump?
Well, they're not. Look,
Those guys.
Johnny Youngblood wasn't with them.
He sure wasn't.
Bernard wasn't with them.
Nobody with any
the
good
brother
sense
from
was there.
116th Street wasn't with them. Waldron
wasn't there.
Butts wasn't with them.
Reverend Sharpton wasn't there.
No.
Reverend Sharp. So they had and Reverend Wright wasn't with them, right?
No, Jeremiah Wright, no way in the world.
So that's a hand-picked group that would say what the God needed them to say, and we sit back and enjoy it. Don't get mad at them. They got paid. And I'm not saying do this to get paid. They got paid. So when you see them, they don't. The effectiveness of white supremacy is our belief in it.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
When we stop believing in white supremacy and stop being brought into that whirlpool of trying to straighten out a system that's not going to work for us, and begin to pull back and say, all right, what kind of system do we want? What kind of system can we have our children begin to have a dialogue around? Okay. I don't necessarily know, but I know in the system that I would set up, it wouldn't be no homeless, and it wouldn't be no unemployed, and it wouldn't be super unaffordable housing. It wouldn't be that. In other words, I'm just dealing, this is the kind of thinking.
We need some sort of socialism.
This is the kind, well, you see,
Which people misunderstand what that means.
because
You know,
socialism was our way within the
black
confines.
Community.
And before we
Community
got
control.
here and after we got here,
Was
the
so-
mutual,
right.
the mutual, they had these
Respect.
mutual, before insurance, they had these mutual societies. I'm talking
Right.
black people had mutual societies, and they pooled their money together
independent.
for burial, and this and that. So the vestiges, slavery did not knock out everything from the minds and souls and aspirations of
African
black people.
Right. Let me-
But the knowledge of what we were able to accomplish is there for us to get into, but we haven't necessarily gotten into, and that's what we have to do.
All right, I'm going to go, we're going to go to roll-in number 3. This is the religion of white supremacy. It's Hidden Colors. You have to see this film. It's an education in what happens to black people as we try to present this imagery to you every time we appear in front of you. So run that piece and we'll be right back at you.
Excuse me.
Continued until 1865 for about 2 generations, right? So how do you reconcile that? You can no longer bring in Africans, but you still have the business of slavery, so they still needed Africans to do the work down south, especially after the cotton gin was invented. So you had the creation of breeding farms. 2 of the largest slave breeding farms in the United States were on the eastern shore of Maryland and right outside of Richmond, Virginia. They literally bred black people like cattle. They would have a strong black man have sex with a healthy black woman. That woman could be his mother, his sister, his aunt, his cousin. It didn't matter, because the end product was produce a child that I can sell, bodies that I can sell and ship down to Mississippi, Alabama, Georgia, South Carolina, North Carolina. It was a business.
We had breeding farms in the United States that would put one person from one plantation against another. We even had a system where if you were a breeder, male on one plantation, and a female on another plantation, or even on the same plantation, even if you were mother and son, they would mate you. And so I tell a lot of my patients and a lot of my friends, you got to stop using the MF word, because that was a description of what actually happened when the paper bag would go over the head to put one breeder against another when they were related.
Incest. Take the eastern shore of Maryland, for example, right? Most people live within a 50-mile radius of where they were born. A large percentage of the people who lived on the eastern shore of Maryland during this time of these breeding farms migrated to Baltimore. Baltimore, Maryland is the incest capital of the United States of America. And according to statistics by my colleague, Dr. Patricia Newton, who's a psychiatrist in Baltimore, in that area in Baltimore, Sandtown, where you had these recent rebellions, 9 out of 10 black women in the depressed parts of Baltimore, 9 out of 10 black women have been victims of incest. In the same area, 7 out of 10 black men have been victims of incest.
Watch the news channels here in America and see how many mixed race black men and women are forecasting the news in America today. Don't miss it. Don't miss who's on the television screen talking to us. That black-skinned woman or man is peripherally there. This mulatto, who I don't blame for their condition, but if you accept that role in society, then you got to take responsibility for what comes from it.
You saw in the movie Precious, right? Monique won an Oscar for her role in Precious. Incest. She had sexual relationships with her own daughter, right? Her daughter was sexually molested by her father in the movie. When Monique was on the Oprah Winfrey Show talking about that film, she talked about the fact that what helped to prepare for that role was her thinking about how she was sexually molested by her own brother, right? Oprah had Monique's brother on her show and asked him point blank, did you know what you were doing when you sexually molested your own sister? And he said, well, I was sexually molested by my uncle ever since I was a little boy. I thought this was natural. Everybody did it. So we look at the socialization of deviant behavior that was set in motion over 100 years ago that is still playing itself out in our communities right now. So until we can understand our history, until we can understand the pain that we're still going through, the mental anguish that we're still going through, and begin to realize how that shapes our thinking, our speech, and our actions today, we'll never be able to heal ourselves or effectively deal with the problems that we still have in our communities.
Because there was once, back in the days of apartheid, a professor came forth and stated, we cannot love you, African man, because to love you would mean that we would die.
Because we gave him the keys to the castle. He said, what's making these people so powerful? He said, family. I destroyed the family, I destroyed the empire. So they sold your mother one way and your father another way. They destroyed the family. That's what destroyed Africa. So we had to build family. A black man and a black woman in love, raising a healthy child is the most dangerous thing on this planet. We're looking for a gun. The gun is the relationship.
There you have it. Our success comes in raising a family.
Well done, brother.
And really, see, this little piece here lays a foundation of what we're struggling against, which we all mentally know, but it's well explained here, just like Martin explained how immigrants come here thinking we're inferior. So that's a problem for all of us. So those of you who, I remember I got a comment from one watcher saying that I was pretty enlightened enough to lead this program. I laughed at it, but they were sick. I've been here 20 years. I work hard doing this. It's not easy. You know, just because I'm light-skinned, I mean, well, like they said, most of the broadcasters were light.
Yeah, that's a fact.
All right? But I didn't get here because I was light. I got here because I worked hard.
Because you did the show.
I did the show. This is my blood, sweat, and tears. God put me here. You know,
it's interesting. They up at the film festival, they were throwing out this new terminology, and I said to a young lady, "Don't use that term. Biracial. Don't use that term. Biracial is by any kind of racial, not just white, black. It could be Asian and white. It could be anything. So don't use that term." I said, "Do you know the recent origin of the term?" She said, "No." I said, "You lived through it. You didn't pick up on it. Everybody lived through it. It was this year. A black woman, a deep black Jamaican woman, married a white man, produced a child, and that child married Prince, what's his name in England? They don't call her
Harry.
black. They come up with a new term, biracial, because they don't even want to say that this sister is black. You understand? You've got to listen to the double speak of these people. So I said to this young girl, "Don't use that term." I said, because she was light skinned, I said, you have some white blood in you, but you're black. All right? I said, and that young lady over there in England, she's black. She ain't biracial. She does have the genetic makeup from two different races. I said, but race is a European concept. And it's a late date European concept from the 1400s. Prior to that, people were known as clans, tribes, and nations. That was it. And you could be of a clan, a tribe, or a nation, and it didn't make any difference what your skin was. You were part of that group. It wasn't about race. The Romans even knew. As their empire expanded, you were a Roman. You weren't white, you weren't black, you were a Roman. You had African governors in the Roman Empire. You had African sultans in India.
Yeah.
It wasn't about black wasn't about white. So we need to really understand how words are used to manipulate our thinking. Just as the cowboy with the white hat, the cowboy with the black hat.
Well, you know,
Blacklisted,
Blackball.
blackball.
It's all in education. Like we say, we have been closed-minded to the fact of how we fight amongst each other because of this light-dark business that we're talking about. I know many a time I didn't know it at the time, but I've been chosen because white people look at me as being half black. They've said that to me. You're only half black. I said, well, you're half black. I mean, yeah, I'm black. but the half black is more acceptable. Now, let me run this other piece.
You're not a threat.
Huh?
You're not a threat.
Before you go to
No, it's
that
not
other
a threat,
piece,
just-
before you go to that other, what you just said about being safe
Yeah.
is what the guy that headed the Democrat Party was telling his own people about Barack Obama. He said, hey, he's different. You remember that? I just can't call the guy, he's sick or ill now, but he assured them that Barack Obama, this is a public thing, he's all right. He's different, he's not like these other guys.
He's not a militant, huh?
He's not a Negro born in America.
Well, see.
But I can't call the guy's name.
Wait, you said he wasn't born in America?
But how many Negroes you know? How many Negroes you know that would go to Harvard and then go to Chicago and be a community organizer in the South Side of Chicago?
Well, I checked that out.
I don't think he's the first.
I mean, how many black men you know would get educated at Harvard and go work in the South Side of Chicago?
I checked that out.
It happened. That's where he met his wife.
Excuse me, let me go back. We need to check that out with people who were there in Chicago.
You don't think it was true?
No. I don't know whether it's true or not.
Well, it's true, brother.
As you were
You
saying.
got to go and see where he was born and raised.
No.
Try
If you talk
Hawaii.
to a guy,
You can't hate anybody being born and
you ever
raised
hear
in Hawaii.
Black Agenda Report?
Yeah.
The guy that runs it? His name is not coming up on my radar. But he was in Chicago. I asked him, I said, how come you, this is before the brother was elected, I said, how come you really hard on this guy? And he told me why. I said, oh, okay. Was I out there? I didn't check out what he said. But he's a good guy to talk to. This guy, blackagendareport.com or .org. He's accessible. But anyway, that's neither here nor there. The thing is, what Graham touched on just now is resisting the language of the oppressor. They throw out a term, we pick it up and we run with it. We also use the term we when it's not we, but it's them. They have a guy in office who is a abomination to them. He's an embarrassment to them. He's not an embarrassment to me.
Because we know him.
I sit back and I enjoy the show. When he was running for office and they had 50 people running against him who were the cream of the planet Earth,
50.
and he knocked each one, said the woman looked like a horse. In fact, she did. And on down the line, you understand? It said the guy's father was a spy.
Omarosa. What do you call Omarosa? A low life and a
Well, that's
and a
after
dog.
the fact. She look, this sister.
But explain what low life and dog means. I mean, they're
Code
worried about
words.
them
Code words.
for nigger and bitch.
That's right.
All right? So they're talking about, did he ever call anybody the N-word? They call Omarosa the N-word.
She was
That's what
all
low
over.
life means.
She was all over the White House. Remember when she got married?
Yep.
She brought the whole entourage in there to take pictures. And they
showing
said, where
off.
these Negroes coming from? It was in the
showing
East
off.
Wing and the
She
West
having a
Wing.
good time.
I'll tell you one thing.
A reality star.
Just note when the president is moving around, you will not see a black Secret Service agent
None?
on him. Check it out. I haven't seen one, and I know some Secret Service agents. I have not seen one black man near that
It
guy.
bothers me that it makes Trump in the White House makes a lot of black people happy.
No, we're not happy. When Graham said, when you made a comment
I said
before
the
he
good
said
thing
he's
is
good,
is that
one of the benefits of him being in
forefront.
there is that it's bringing us the muck up to the surface for black people to see that's always been there.
But black people don't feel they can do anything about it.
What percentage of the total population of the United States are we?
17, 18%,
All right.
20%.
Nowhere near a majority. As I said before, if it wasn't for white people, Barack Obama could never have been the president of the United States because there aren't enough black people to vote for Barack
Right.
Obama. So it's not just about us. We need to understand that black people and smart thinking, commonsensical white people collectively have to work together in the next upcoming election. If they
Amen.
don't, this jerk will remain another 4 years, and the damage that
that's
he's
impossible.
doing in the courts, his appointment of these circuit court judges
He's killing
beyond the
himself.
Supreme Court
Beyond.
is going to do irreparable harm to this country for decades, for the
Already
next
has.
30, 40 years.
Just the amount of judges. Well, let me run this piece and we'll come
Over
back.
23 judges he's appointed already.
I thought
this
more than
year,
that. It's more than
23.
that. It's more than 23. I think it's something like 37.
Then it's
38.
even worse.
You know?
Worse.
I thought it was more than that, matter of fact.
And that's
I'm
why,
gonna have a right figure
that's
for
why
you.
the Department of Justice hasn't moved on the Eric Garner case.
Yeah.
The police commissioner, Jimmy O'Neill, is moving on it, but the Justice Department hasn't moved on it. Since he came into office, the Justice Department is not handling any issues regarding civil rights. Don't expect it, because it's not going to happen. This is where we are.
All right, and I was going to show the buck busting. I think we ran that piece once.
Cowboys?
No, this is serious. Busting. All right, run number 3. This is not funny. It's about a 5-minute piece. We're going to have to go out after that. Run number 3, please.
Number 3.
Can you run it?
Number 3.
Or 2 if you can't run 3.
We already ran 3, so you want 2?
Oh, we ran 3?
Yeah.
That's right, I'm sorry. I was thinking of 4.
4.
All right, run 4.
Take 4.
That's right, we ran 3.
Put something on.
No, I want you to see the buck busting. This is mean. This really
The white supremacists like to show dominance is by using sexual exploitation. People who are dominated socially can be dominated sexually.
Sex is a way in which you show your domination. It's like a male dog gets on another male dog and humps on him. He's not after the sex, he's showing he dominates. I'm in control.
If you have a system in place to guarantee your very survival, you will use any means at your disposal. So sex then becomes a tool. This whole idea of creating a mulatto caste is designed to create a buffer between the whites and the blacks. You give more privileges to this mulatto caste.
Even Chancellor Williams, in his book, he was claiming that due to a biracial population which came about from Greek mixing with the indigenous African population there, it rose up another army which fought against their African mothers and fathers.
In Africa, when the Europeans came in, the Portuguese would mate with the Africans, and their offspring would be called Lancados. And the Lancados were the offspring of African and Europeans. And what happened was the Lancados, the mixed offspring of the Europeans and the Africans, they became slave traders themselves because, again, a lot of biracial children would take on the ideology of the father. So whenever you see people talk about, well, Africans sold other Africans, this is really who they're talking about.
When the Inquisition left Portugal and went to West Africa, this is during the period of the 1400s and 1500s, and they became the people who were running the slave trade. Some were Christians, some were Jews, many were Jews, and what they would do was marry African women, usually from a chieftaincy family or somebody where they can get in good. And they would use the offspring of these marriages to be the middleman in the slave trade. That went on all over West Africa.
It was the mulattoes who did Haiti as much, if not more harm than the French. Because there's this thing about white supremacy is a very infectious disease. And when you buy into the lie that white or light skin is superior to black or dark skin, then we'll find instances where a mixed race black would be more vicious than a white person, because they have to prove to the white person that I'm on your side, I'm okay.
Mulattoes have always been used. The French were good at that, setting it up in Trinidad. They had the different staircases of mulattoes and octoroons, octagons, and different classifications of mulattoes. And they give the mulattoes the power over the darker skinned ones. And then on top of the mulattoes were the white people. It's another way of buffering yourself from the attack. So when black people get angry, they got to go through the mulattoes to get to the white people. So that was actually a buffer zone in the manipulation and controlling the people.
You had a ship full of African men, women, and children who were at the mercy of the captain and all the sailors on that crew. And those men could have sex with anybody they wanted to. The women, the children, and the men.
You got to see 3 months tied down with these white men. There ain't no women there for the most part. When they start bringing women, they weren't even bringing women. They were bringing girls between the ages of 6 and 15 and raping them all. But they also were raping the men. Same things was happening on the plantation to demasculinize the black man.
Control the slave population is to rape a father in front of his sons, or to take the biggest, baddest black man on the plantation and do something horrible to him, to completely humiliate and emasculate him so that people won't respect him anymore. And that still happens to this day.
In the Caribbean, they had seasoning plantations, which were plantations used to break the slaves. And one plantation, or one place that had a lot of seasoning plantations, was Jamaica. And people have to wonder, what were they doing on these seasoning plantations that was worse than what was happening on the regular plantations? Well, one thing that they were doing on these plantations, especially in Jamaica, they were doing a process called buck breaking, where the white supremacist slave owner or the white supremacist overseer would literally rape black men in front of the whole black population in order to break his spirit, in order to break him down as a man, in order to show dominance against him, in order to show the rest of the black population that this is not your leader. I just made your leader submit to me sexually. And this happened a lot in Jamaica. This is why homosexuality is so looked down upon in Jamaican culture today.
And it was a way primarily of cutting down those who would rebel.
Make you angry. I mean, ready to go grab a gun after this one, right?
We had that in late history here in New York. Remember the 70 precinct. Remember, a Haitian man is brought into the 70 precinct. He's sodomized with a plunger.
Right.
The
name?
The after effects, we're all getting older, right? No.
Amadou. A plunger.
Louima, Abner Louima. Thank you. I was with Abner Louima. I was guarding him in Washington, D.C. Ed Towns had asked me to bodyguard him in Washington. He was very concerned while being down there. He was wearing a bulletproof vest.
Louima?
Louima was wearing a bulletproof vest more than a year after the incident. Now, you have to consider the psychological damage done to a man in New York, not in 1659 or whatever, but in 1990 something. A man who was the father of a little girl. That cop was going out with a black woman who had the temerity to stand up and say that he was not a racist because he was with her. Well, she failed to understand the dynamic. She was just a sex object to him. All right? This is what all of this does
Did the cop think
to the
Louima
mind.
was gay?
No, he didn't think he was gay. He was
Why?
just a degenerate.
What we
Just
saw.
a degenerate. And you wouldn't do something like that if you hadn't done it before. You don't go from 0 to 500 in one night.
I thought this was an anti-gay thing.
No, had
No,
nothing to do
policeman.
with gay. Not at all. He said that during the skirmish out there, he thought that Louima threw something at him or hit him or whatever, and he arrested him. All right? You don't take somebody into a precinct and go grab a plunger and run it up their rectum. Matter of fact, he could have killed him doing that.
Yeah.
Rupture the bowel, the person dies. You don't do something like that
But how do you think
unless
all
you've
this
been on that level before.
How do you think all this affects us as a nation of people, or as a nation of black? How many black men can look at this and stay mild-mannered, or it doesn't rile up some sort of real hatred inside you?
We have, look at the piece on Baltimore when they talked about the incest.
Right.
Yeah.
We have so many
But that's all
psychological
internal.
problems
All right.
as
Okay.
a people
That's
as a
never been
result
done.
of this.
It's
And
never
it's
been
never been done
done.
to
But we
anybody
don't
else.
talk
right.
about it. We don't talk about it.
Well,
It's
we
not
just
shown
we're
to
learning
us.
about it, and we have to talk about it to get an understanding of why we are the way we are towards one another.
And you being raised a Catholic, today with the priests dealing with
the thing today,
Pennsylvania.
wow,
Pennsylvania, I mean,
But that
it's always
I-
been there.
I pick up periodically papers that are outside of our community. And a couple of years ago, the Irish Echo, I think that's the paper.
Irish Echo.
And they were talking about the tens of thousands of Irish boys who have been raped in Ireland by these priests in boarding schools and in the it's interesting how they call it the rectory. You understand? I don't know what the bottom of that is. But here, let me say a couple of things.
Whoa.
That clip, the Baltimore clip, the socialization of deviant behavior. The socialization of deviant behavior is happening right now.
Yeah, that's why I brought it up.
It's happening right now under our noses.
Right.
And it's so-called sex education is being taught in these schools by people who have an agenda.
right.
And cartoons are showing deviant behavior while your grandchild is looking at TV, you on the phone talking to Myrtle, or you looking at a basketball game, your child is looking at stuff on a cartoon that's borders on deviant.
Internet.
And in porn on the internet, the children we can't fool ourselves that our children are looking at this stuff and being programmed by it. But here, look, my contribution is in terms of white supremacy. If black people want to understand white supremacy and how to some of it, the springs and motives of it, get Message to the Black Man in America by the Honorable Elijah Muhammad.
Okay.
What bust up, remember I said earlier, white supremacy thrives on our belief in white supremacy. So when you get a dose of the reality of who is the original man and woman of the planet Earth and of the universe, you can call it propaganda, but it ain't. Malcolm thrived on that. The boxer Muhammad Ali and other black men and women thrived on that. Who is the original man? And one of the pillars of white supremacy in America is the belief that a particular group are the chosen people of it, the real children of Israel, when in actuality it's black people.
Right.
It's black people who are the children of Israel, and America is that Babylon or that Egypt that's talked about in the Bible. This is not trying to convert anybody, but this is what you go to. And if you bring it up to your preachers, who are the real children of Israel, and they skirt that thing, and don't tell you that it's you, you better run to the mosque and say, let me get some further verification. Because the preachers at a high level of degrees in certain organizations, they know that Jesus is a black man. They know that you can go to Jerusalem and see, not anybody, but you can see his body preserved. I haven't been there, but this is the teaching, preserved. You can see that he's a black man, but they're sworn to secrecy. So white supremacy is a system that's been in place for 6,000 years, and that time is up. And it's time for us to do something for self. In fact, the latest Final Call newspaper, which people can look at in the library, says our sentence in America is up. Black people's sentence in America is up. We got to go for self. And the headline is The Fire Next Time, which is what James Baldwin talked about after he met with the Honorable Elijah Muhammad.
All right, I'm going to take hold of this and just give my little report on white supremacy. You know, well, it's here, full bloom with Donald Trump. But I believe that we are spiritual people on the planet, and that I'm blessed with the name of Gilchrist. It means worker for Christ, and I try to be as Christ-like as I can every time I come in front of you. And with my brethren, we come here to make you aware of the madness that goes on being raised black. We've survived. He's almost 70, he's 77, we're close to 80. So we come here to teach, as we've given them, blessed to have survived all this madness all these many years. So you, as youthful minds and spirits, need to listen up to what happens on the Gilchrist Experience. You know, if you want to be Christ-like, you come to Gilchrist and his family. But we're trying to be real. We're trying to be loving.
You're not being ignorant.
We're real.
Yeah.
Light skin and all. You know, but I'm not here because of that.
Are you black enough?
But I'm black. I'm black spiritually. And the God in me believes in the God in you. I believe in the God in you because I know you got a God in you. Because you're human, right? And if you're spiritual place, any correct. Color. All right? So with this, we'll continue on our journey of goofing on Donald Trump.
Work with our families.
Come alive and understand that this man's a fool. And I want all you rational people out there to take hold. I don't care what color you are. This is a fool we got now.
Give them hidden colors so they can go online and look it up.
You have to see hidden colors. I'm going to continue to run this piece for you so you can understand what's happened to us. We all need to be educated because this is a true education. And you see all these people on there are educated people that we know about.
Scholars.
Come from all genres. All right, power to the people. God bless. Gentlemen, that was a winner. All right.
Those are excellent videos, man. Patricia Newton, she used to lecture at my old church.
Yeah, right.
Yanni Youngblood brought him up.
Yeah, I mean, all of these people, and Dr. Nichols. Oh, man.
You see all the Lila Africa.
And you can get Dr. Nichols.
Valentine.
You can get Dr. Nichols on your show.
The African went to Africa and they thought he was white.
Oh, Valentine?
Valentine.
Yeah, they're right.
He was white. And you go to Africa and they have bleaching cream. They're so far behind.
Imagine.
All right.
Rape. A woman is raped. If she's raped in the street, that's one thing. If she's raped at home, she has no sanctuary. Africans were raped at home.
Power to the people.
We were brought here.
God bless.
Wow. They're thinking in the motherland.